Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
The spring game is just 10 days away as James Franklin continues to get his squad ready, and Mike Young and Megan Duffy's teams got a little bit shuffled up during the week. Plus, the Diamond Sports are here on episode 480 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We're recording on Wednesday, April 8th, 2026 from the Tech Solutions studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Today's episode is also brought to you by Tyris Homes. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Landon Weaver. To my left is lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman. Across the way is our managing editor, David Cunningham. And to my right, senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Producing the show behind the scenes, as always, is Mr. Nick Brown. All right, spring game, 10 days away. What were your guys' takeaways from practice this week with Franklin being more hands-on with the offense?
I guess it's not really too much of a surprise. It's a new school, plenty of new players, an offensive coordinator who hasn't been an offensive coordinator before. And I think Franklin, I think he's known as a recruiter, but I think he enjoys the coaching aspect more than anything of it. And as far as being like hands-on with the offense, we're not necessarily saying that he's out there like designing things and everything like that, but you see him out there like coaching tight ends when you're blocking on the edge. We saw that in a drill the previous week. So I don't think if Tech's offense doesn't do well this year, people are going to be like, oh, look back in the spring, he said he had to take a hands-on role. That means he knew from the very beginning that the coaching was bad, right? But I think he's not just out there coaching the offense per se from like a coordinator role. You see him coaching the wide receivers. You see him coaching the tight ends. You just see him taking a hands-on role with personnel. We're not necessarily talking about him dictating to what the X's and O's of the offense are going to be. I think he's gotten away from that in his career, and I think he just saw this as an opportunity to maybe get back into it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about that, Landon, I just want to make this clear. This should not count as your podcast assignment this week in class. I have Landon in my class, and the assignment this week was the podcast. So it's got to be something different than the Tech Sideline podcast.
Noted.
Noting for talking about James Franklin's outsized role with the offense. I think he explained it afterwards. He's like, at Penn State and Vanderbilt, it was my offense early on. And then when you become successful at these places and you hire guys like, Andy Kotelnicki, who are some of the other big name coordinators they have? Yurcevich. What was the guy's name? I'm blanking on the name, but
the guy who went to Akron and he's the head.
Yeah, Urich.
He's the other head coach Soraka.
No, Moorhead. Joe Moorhead.
Ronnie.
Ricky Ronnie. When you bring guys like in, Ronnie was the internal guy, but like Joe Moorhead, outside hire coming in. When you bring those guys in, they have their offenses and they have the ways that they like to run things. And in order to get them, you sort of have to make promises to them and understand that there's going to be their way of doing things, and you kind of step back. Even though you're the head coach, this is your team, it's their offense. You have to give them the freedom to run this offense. That didn't exactly work out well at the end of his Penn State time there, I would say, that last year especially. Ty Howell is an internal hire, a guy who's been a position coach for him for a while, has not done it before at this level. I know he called plays in like a bowl game or at the end of a year one time on an interim basis, but has not done this full time. So I think they went into this understanding, hey, I'm going to have some input on this. Hey, we're going to do this together. I'm going to bring you along a little bit in this whole thing. And the other side of it is, and every time we're out at practice, we see him with the offense. He's always out there in the offensive field. I don't know if I've ever seen him on the defensive field. It's a limited amount of time that we're out there, but also, it's just, I think that's where he spends most of his time. And part of that is because you have Brent Pry.
He's got a veteran defensive coordinator.
You have essentially a head coach of the defense, and, head coach, he was the head coach here a couple months ago. So you have that trust with that guy and that history with that guy. I don't know if that's necessarily the case if he doesn't have that background with Pry. So yeah, he's a lot involved in the offense. He's very excited in drills. I mean, we've seen him get out there and get in a guy's face or like, kind of back and forth with the officials. What was the play the other day? It was like a long play. It's like, did he get in the end zone? Get in the end zone? The ref's like, he went out here. He's like, that's a bad call. Just like jokingly saying it like that. But I think I don't know if I'd call it re-energized because I never see him operate at Penn State on a personal level like that. But he seems energized out there. And, I'd have to ask somebody before to compare it to what he was like before, but he seems very involved and, I think maybe refreshed about having this offensive approach.
Some people just need a fresh start and they don't realize it until they get the actual fresh start. Now, he didn't have it. It wasn't his decision that he was getting a fresh start, right? But sometimes when that happens to you, you're just like, man, I can see that I needed that now.
Well, I think that's nature. Yeah. If you're at a place for 10, 12 years, whatever it was, what is at Penn State, and people expectations become higher. If you don't get to those expectations, people grumble about you, even though it's still very successful. I know they got off to a bad start this year, but the previous year they were a couple plays away from playing the national title game. So you can tell that there's sort of been some angst built up over time that as soon as things dropped off a little bit, people turned on him very quickly. And 10 years anywhere for a football coach is a long time. And I think it's probably just best to hit the reset. Frank Beamer is rare, extremely rare in this industry. You get the 10 seasons. It's why like Dave Doran keeps on ticking at NC State. I'm kind of surprised by it because he's never really elevated that program above, like they're good to pretty good. And I guess when your counterpart is Will Wade, you can look pretty brilliant and loyal by comparison. But that sort of surprised me that he's had that long of a run there.
Well, I think Franklin probably views the game and just operationally what he wants to do a little bit through a different lens. Now that he's failed, he got fired. He's got an opportunity to kind of regather himself. And how do I want to approach it differently? Learn from previous experiences. And to the Pry point, like we're talking to Kyle Altuner about it, and he mentioned that Franklin is not afraid. Like he'll walk down the hallway and come sit in like positional meetings on the offensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. That tells you how comfortable he feels with Brett Pry on the defensive side of the ball. Just, hey, Pry goes and does his thing, and that unit operates how that unit wants to operate, and Howell might need a little bit more help in certain situations. But it's nice that he's an offensive guy. Franklin was always an offensive coach, multiple positions. It's like, okay, he can go be hands-on and have conversations with those guys, and all the players. Like talking to Altuner, he's like, "Oh yeah, it's great. Like having the head coach just randomly sitting in on your position meetings and like get things across that he thinks are important. It's like you don't necessarily get that all the time, so it's a little bit of a different approach." I
think head coaches like doing that too because all the other stuff they have to do can just feel tedious, especially now. Because think about how much of his job is just dealing with NIL. And dealing with contracts and dealing with asks from agents and all this other stuff. And then in addition to all the discipline stuff a head coach has to do, like that can just be terrible. And I think I saw it. I saw it the most with Fuente when he was here, is he would get the spring ball and he just liked it because it's just like you were just coaching ball. You were just out there, just pure football. You weren't worrying about preparing for a game. You weren't worrying about all the other off-field stuff. You just really enjoyed that aspect of it. So I think these coaches get in this situation, and it can be very fun for them. It can be sort of a turn back the clock when they were a position coach and out there, and that's what they were worrying about most of the time instead of all the other stuff that comes across their desk now.
Yeah, and speaking, you guys mentioned Ty Howell and how Franklin is going to be more hands-on with the offense, but what does that dynamic look like when you're more hands-on, but also you got to work with your OC at some point as well?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. If you go back to the Fuente era, it seems like towards the end of his tenure, sometimes he was like, well, I've gone to spend more time with the offensive side of the ball recently, and the offense would get better, but then the defense would get worse. And then he'd go spend more time with the defensive side of the ball, and then they'd get better, but then the offense would get worse, right? And he was spread too thin because he didn't have enough good assistants and enough good coordinators. Again, if the offense struggles this year, people are going to look back at some of the things he's saying right now and say, well, he had to spend more time with them because those guys aren't good enough coaches. I don't think that's the case. I think he just wants to get out there and just be hands-on again because he hasn't been able to do that in a long time. But when you hire somebody who hasn't been a coordinator before, you have to have a lot of conversations about philosophy and practice structure, and just probably a lot of things just people like us can't think about because we've never been coaches before. But it helps that they've worked together for 4 or 5 years now, so they know each other very, very well. I'm not saying it'll be absolute smooth sailing because hardly anything ever is, but I feel like the relationship should be fine just simply because they've been coaching together for so long now, and I think they've got a good idea about what each other likes.
Yeah, I don't think it's a set it and forget it type of situation. Maybe when you have an established offensive coordinator, you can do that. When you have a first-time guy doing it, you have to put some, guardrails along there to help him along. And, they've done that. Not only Franklin helping out, Warren Ruggiero, offensive analyst who's called plays for 30 years, whatever he's been doing right now. Danny Rocco, who's, let me get his title right here, senior defensive analyst for offense. Figure that one out. He's there to help as well, giving the offense a different look or a defensive perspective about this stuff. So they have a lot of people around it, which, I think Pry tried to do that with Bowen. I think that's what the Sean Glenn, I get his name right. No,
Joe Rudolph.
Coach Glenn.
Brad Glenn.
Brad Glenn.
The quarterback's
Blanked
coach.
on that. Brad Glenn, quarterback's coach,
yeah.
Joe Rudolph, offensive line coach, who had both called plays in the past. I think that was the plan in year 1, and then in year 2, they're both gone. And then Bowen's by himself, and you go, okay, is this going to work? Who are the people helping him along in this situation? So I think, I don't know if Franklin looked at that and goes, I'm bound and determined not to make that mistake again. I'm going to give this guy the help that he needs. But I think, he understands as a veteran coach, they can be tough as a first-time play caller. You got to give guys a sense of how to do it and a good way to do it, to guide them a little bit before they really, take flight there.
Well, and the other thing he talked about with Hal is how good of a tight ends coach he is, which makes sense given the tight ends he's produced. And
he's got 3 in the NFL right now.
And
one
just
of them's
like
the
4
Mackey
years
Award
at
winner.
Pitt State. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 5-star guy in Luke Reynolds, and now is here. Pretty good tight end room.
Yeah. And Franklin maybe mentioned some new offensive line arrangements. What do you guys think about that?
It's been kind of constantly changing at certain spots throughout the spring. We've seen Kyle Altuner as the number 1 center the whole time. We've actually seen Montavious Cunningham, the number 1 right tackle at times, the whole time. Lath Gannum's been number 1 at left guard the whole time, right?
Yes, pretty much.
So it's really been the right guard and left tackle position that's been kind of different. Some of that is, Johnny Garrett at first was number 1 at right guard. Then he wasn't at practice at all last week, so I assume he was a little bit banged up.
It might have been class, too. I
think
Brody Meadows had class, then came back later is what they said.
Okay. But yesterday, I think Garrett was like number 2 and Brody Meadows was number 1. So, and Lucas Austin was number 1 at left tackle, and Aiden Lynch had been number 1 earlier in the spring. But you just got to remember that Logan Howland, he's not Virginia Tech's most experienced offensive lineman, but he's got the most experience / good performances under his belt.
I think he'll start at left tackle once he's back.
Right.
So, that's a big piece.
Yeah. Justin Terry's been out. He's actually... and
he was finally back at practice.
Right. Nick, you can update your graphic. He's a redshirt sophomore. Okay. They messed that up on the Hokie Sports. But... So he's back at practice. He could play tackle or guard, and I think he's going to play this year. So it's really hard to get a feel for what the offensive line will look like in that first game because they've had so many guys in and out this spring, whether that's due to injuries or class or whatever. But the guy that I think is really maybe, I don't want to say surprising people, but I don't think anybody would have said at the beginning of spring practice that Montavious Cunningham would be the number 1 right tackle the entire way through spring. Right. And it's interesting that Matt Moore said yesterday he wanted to play Montavious at tackle last year, but he couldn't because there were injuries and everybody in and out of the lineup. Cunningham had played tackle when he was at Georgia State before he came to Virginia Tech and played pretty well there, played against a couple of SEC teams and held up pretty well as a right tackle. You wouldn't think at 6'3" that he would be a tackle tight, but when you look at him, his arms are pretty long, and he actually looks more like a tackle than he does a guard. Tech tried to move him inside to guard 2 years ago. He got a little banged up, and it didn't work out. But I think he's actually at his natural position now. If he can stay healthy, would not surprise me if he locked that position down.
I think interesting thing that Moore said yesterday is he thinks they can play 10 guys. And, you hear that and you go, okay, come on. This is spring optimism at its best here. But then you look back historically what Matt Moore has said. He's been a pretty straight shooter when it comes to this stuff. I remember before the start of last year, it was like 1 week before the season. He's like, offensive line rebuilds are like a 2-year process. You go, that's not a good sign for year one here. Yeah. Maybe he's a little too honest in that situation. I sort of believe him. And you look at these guys and the lineup that was out there the other day. They had Lucas Austin at left tackle, Brody Meadows at right guard, Montavious Cunningham at right tackle. All 3 of those guys were hurt last year.
Right.
Lucas Austin played 2 games. I think he had like 9 snaps, something like that. Meadows missed the entire season and the entire spring before that with some serious knee leg. Was it Achilles or AC, something like that. Something pretty serious. Cunningham didn't play after the NC State game. Mm-hmm. So, that's essentially all of the conference season that he missed. And those are 3 guys that are with the ones right now. Now, they're rotating in and out and trying to get guys looks. But when you think about depth and then you add the transfers to that mix as soon as they're healthy, I think it's in a better spot. Now, I'm not totally buying that this is 10 deep and they roll them in. This is not the 2020 offensive line where they had 2 full lines of starters,
rare.
5
even for
NFL
teams,
guys. Darisaw was a star at left tackle. Brock Hoffman's in the NFL has carved out quite a career. It's not going to be that. But I think it'll be improved from last year. I think they can be better, and I'll be interested to see where the actual starting 5 ends up in the fall, because I don't know if it's necessarily what it is right now.
I thought it was interesting that Moore took a little bit of an exception to the fact that a reporter asked about the offensive line. Pass blocking wasn't as good as run blocking last year. He basically said, yeah, that's true, but last year, we basically had a quarterback that didn't know how to step up into the pocket, is basically what he said.
He was a little more, he danced around a little bit more. Yeah. It's more what's around you.
Yeah,
he didn't say they were bad at stepping up in the pocket. He said this year, they're very good at stepping up in the pocket. But the implication was there. But he he basically said last year they had a good running quarterback who was not as good at passing. Mm-hmm. And, they were better at run blocking as a result, better than they were at passing. And now they have guys that step up in the pocket and routes that are shorter and the ball's coming out quicker. And he's like, well, hey, people are going to say you're much improved at pass blocking. When no, it's maybe the operation is better than that. Now we'll see what they like run blocking, because they don't have that 11th guy as the quarterback running the ball so frequently. So now you're gonna be one man down essentially when you're blocking and running on most plays this year. So we'll see how effective they are on that side of it. But it's a give and take. But it was an interesting answer, and that's part of the reason why I wrote about it, because it's just like, okay, he's saying what everybody thought.
Right. And the thing is, if you look at the PFF grades last year, now the blocking grades include everybody, wide receivers, tight ends, everybody. But they graded out pretty similarly between run blocking and pass blocking. But if you look at Virginia Tech's running backs, they broke a ton of tackles, forced a ton of missed tackles, and made a lot of yards after contact. And I include Kyron Drones in there as well. So, yeah, they gained a lot of yards, but it doesn't necessarily mean the blocking was great all the time. Those running backs had to do a lot of that on their own. So I definitely understand where he's coming from as far as that goes. And like we've been talked about all offseason, I think they've done a good job going out there and getting quarterbacks who are natural passers. So you would expect them to have better footwork and just better understanding of what to do in the pocket, and that will save some sacks, so to speak.
I think I trust Moore to get that group right.
I agree.
Like, of the coaches they've hired on the offensive line, he's one that I look at it. Going back to Vance Weiss, maybe, who I thought was a good coach on the offensive line. I think, you look a couple years ago, West Virginia, they had the 4th ranked rushing offense in the country.
And it progressively got better the longer he was there.
Yeah. So, you give him time I feel like fixing an offensive line is kind of like moving like a big ship. Like, you got to get momentum going. Right? These are big guys. There's not a lot of them. A couple injuries can really hit your depth really bad. And it takes a while to recruit and build that up over time. And Franklin, to his credit, since he's been here, 4 transfers, 7 guys they signed. I don't know how many of those 7 freshmen will even factor in this year, if any, because it's just a tough position to play right away. But they are addressing that position and trying to make it better. And I think over time, they will get that going in the right direction.
And speaking of freshmen, Eziuka was at center yesterday.
That's right. He was third team center.
Third team center yesterday. He could play guard or center, but I just thought I'd
Troutman's been playing.
Troutman's been playing
guard.
center and guard, but yeah, mainly at guard. Looks like he's a 2-deep guy there now, as of right now.
I think it's probably, I mean, we talked about this when Matt Moore was retained along with like Fontel Mines, but like the consistency there year over year. Like, can you imagine what this group would look like if they had a different offensive line coach? They went out and hired a new one. I mean, you date back to the final year of Fuente in 2021, and they've had
that would be 5 and 6 if they would have changed it.
Vance Weiss, Joe Rudolph,
Crook,
Ron Crook, and now Matt Moore. I mean, so a little bit of consistency there, I think, goes a long way. Even if you are changing schemes, like if you're going from more run blocking to pass blocking, as far as like you're blocking a stationary quarterback versus a more mobile quarterback. But it seems like, I agree. I think naturally you're skeptical and you're like, do they really have that many guys that can play? But he seems willing to basically be like, yeah, like we've got like 10 guys who can kind of rotate in and out right now. And as you said, Chris, when we were talking about the defensive line, like behind Kamari Copeland, maybe it's because they're all like very similar in terms of how talented they are.
There's like not a great player in there.
But I think you saw last year what happened when like you lose a starter or two and you're throwing Aiden Lynch to the fire. And it's like deer in the headlights a little bit at times. They've got more guys with more experience now.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If they improve to just the average level this year, that is a massive improvement.
Right. That was. It's like wins above replacement. If you could just be a 0, right? That would be better, much better than what last year was.
Yeah. Well, we'll switch from the offensive line to the defensive line, where it was Asen Stevens keeping the lunch pail this week. What did you guys see from him at practice?
Well, we haven't seen anything because we can't really watch. But the coaches,
David probably talked to him the longest, right?
Yeah, I talked to him for about 10 minutes. I mean, Anthony Midget, who of course had the lunch pail and was on that 1999 team that played in the national championship game. Asen Stevens said that he and Brent Pry have kind of tried to figure out if anybody deserves it. And through winter workouts to the beginning of spring, nobody did. And then they gave it to Stevens on Friday. This is a guy, Chris, you in your article you wrote the other day, just you look back at prize recruits. Stevens is one of the only guys left that's really like, I mean, there are a couple of them, him, Benji Gosnell, but there aren't many. He's one of the guys that I think left over has the opportunity to make the biggest impact.
Of Brent Pry's first 32 signees at Virginia Tech, only 8 are left in the program, I believe.
Yeah, and 3 of them are at defensive end.
Right.
That was like a hybrid class, though, wasn't that?
No. The first 20, the ones he signed in 2022, which was Fuente's last class. So Pry came in and signed like 5 guys of his own. Like
right, it was like Meadows, Bradshaw.
Yeah, exactly. And then the entire 2023 class.
Okay.
Yeah, so of all those 32 guys, only 8 are left in the program.
Yeah, and 3 of them are at defensive end with Stevens, Dandy, Jason Abbey. And I mean, Brent Pry's always raved about Asen Stevens. I thought Franklin's comment about Stevens was very interesting. He's like, you just got to know, I forget the exact words he used, but know who you are, essentially, like know your role a little bit. And he meant like, talking to Stevens about it, he brought it up and he said, that's kind of a message we've been reiterating because, and he used the example of Antoine Powell-Ryan. He's like, APR, he had a nasty spin move and he had a great get off, but like, that's not me. I'm a power rusher. Mm-hmm. Like I've got to find different ways to kind of hone in on this skill set. How can I best use this skill set to help this team? And everyone's different. Talking about Dandy, talking about Abby, and I think Stevens isn't a guy who's like super flashy necessarily. He's made a couple plays here and there, Miami game maybe 2 years ago, Stanford,
nice game out there.
I think he had a TFL, but you're seeing him, I think, emerge as a leader. And Franklin touched on that too. He said he's one of the guys who's kind of surprised in terms of leadership roles. So he's the keeper of the pail right now.
Know your role and shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth. Exactly.
The Rock, you know where he got that from, right?
Absolutely. Oh no.
Ed Ogeron, his position coach at Miami. That's what he used to. That's what he used to tell them. Know your role, shut your mouth. That was it. I'm pretty sure watching one of those documentaries, that what it was.
You can't say that to players anymore.
I think Ogeron could say anything he wants to players.
Probably
They'd be like, I can't even understand what he's saying.
What are you going to fire me again?
Right.
Yeah. I think Franklin specifically talked about with Stevens. He's realized now that he's a big, strong guy, and he doesn't need to be doing all these finesse, I'm going to get around you moves.
Well, and remember before, he came in as a linebacker.
Right, correct.
And he gave a lot of credit to Brent Pry. He said, I've told Coach Pry a bunch of times, that was the best decision. Thank you for moving me to defensive end, because he wanted to stay a linebacker. And Pry's I think this is probably the best spot for you. And he's basically outgrown it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Franklin also mentioned, it's not just about, it doesn't just apply to football players. It applies to every job out there. Know who you are. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. If Nick and I switch spots, he would be a horrible analyst, and this podcast would never even get posted because I wouldn't know how to do it. Right? If we flip jobs, we'd both be terrible. But it's about getting people in their right role and them embracing that role and understanding what they're good at. And sometimes that can take a while, especially when you move a guy from one position to another. It's not that he wasn't embracing it. It's just you're caught in that middle of I don't know about this. I've never played defensive end before, but it sounds like he's fully bought in and embracing it now.
Well, I think it can also be difficult when you're sitting behind a bunch of veterans. Mm-hmm. Usually the best opportunity for you to kind of figure it out is to go play. Mm-hmm. And when you've got Antoine Powell-Ryland in front of you, Cole Nelson, there have been a bunch of defensive end vets over these last couple of years. I'm interested to see what that room looks like. Stevens, Abbey, Dandy, Javion Hilson. What does that look like? But clearly they feel good about Stevens' leadership and just the qualities he brings to the table. And I think that's a solid building block for Franklin, for Pry, for this defense their first year.
And Pry and Franklin, history with that family. Tommy Stevens at Penn State previously, quarterback. Was he only quarterback, or did he do tight end stuff?
I think he was a quarterback.
I forget exactly his history there and the difference. I feel like they might have had him do a lot of different stuff.
Well,
maybe he's just a real running quarterback.
I think Asen was a running back too in high school. If you go back and watch his film,
was he?
I think so. I could be thinking about somebody else, but I distinctly remember him scoring touchdowns on his high school film, and I was being it was pretty impressive because he was so big.
Stevens was telling me that so his brother Tommy played for them at Penn State along with Sean Spencer. He obviously played quarterback. Sean Spencer's coaching defensive line, but he was on the Giants at the same time Spencer was an assistant on the Giants.
Right.
Good reviews there. He said his brother told him that all the guys that I've been around that have him as the position coach absolutely love him, and he's like, all right, cool, this will be fun to look forward to. I can't wait to meet him, get to know him. And he's like, yeah, my brother was right. I love him already. So good reviews on Sean Spencer.
Well, Franklin was also super high on Quayshawn Brown yesterday in his press conference. He said that he would be the leader at punt return. Is that of any significance to you guys this early into spring ball?
I think so. He was such a great playmaker for Duke. Obviously, you want to evaluate everybody when they get in, and they have to show that they're good when they get here and not just where they were before. But, let's face it, he was at Duke. They won the ACC, and he was a big-time playmaker against ACC competition and had a lot of production over 2 years there. So it would have been shocking if he didn't come in here and wasn't Virginia Tech's #1 receiver immediately. So I'm not surprised there. He still had to earn it, of course. He is dangerous. He's a threat every time he touches the ball, so it makes sense to have him at punt returner, particularly with his size, and he's a guy with experience doing that. So you want to get him as many touches as possible without, wearing him out at his size. I wouldn't have him back there returning every single punt that VMI does, because it's just not necessary in that game. Let some other guys get some reps. But I definitely expect him to be the primary punt returner this year, and he'll probably break one at some point.
Yeah, and it was such a letdown last year at punt return.
Yeah.
The previous years you had Tucker Holloway at the end of that 22 season who was electric. Jalen Lane takes it over. He housed a couple, is doing that in the NFL now.
Yeah.
And then Holloway, injured / redshirt / transfer, whatever the situation was last year, where he ended up leaving the program, but didn't really have any opportunities earlier in the year either. And it was just a nothing position for them. They didn't get any big plays. They didn't get any sparks out of that. There might have been one decent
I want to
return.
say Spencer had one
Spencer had a
decent
14-yarder. I'm looking at the stats here.
14-yarder, baby.
But that's not a 70-yarder, right? And that's what you look at Virginia Tech's history. That's what it's accustomed to. And you can go back to D'Angelo Hall and Eddie Royal.
I go back to Andre
Greg
Davis.
Stroman,
Yeah.
Andre. I mean, the list goes on and on over 3 decades of standout punt returners. So that's a spot they really need to get going again. And again, I'm not a football expert. I don't go out there and I'm like, I'm judging these guys based on their technique and stuff. I'm just telling you, when I see Quayshawn Brown, and it is Quayshawn, we asked him about, I've been saying Kayshawn is Quayshawn. When you see him move, he just looks like he's in a different gear than other guys on the field. He gets to a top speed quicker. He accelerates fast. Franklin has mentioned he's got elite ball skills, that just hands and going up and catching the ball, and that can make you bigger than you feel when you're on the field. He's not a very big guy, but he plays larger than he is. I just think he's going to be very effective this year. And Blacksburg area Mexican restaurants, let's get this man an NIL deal. His nickname is Queso.
Yeah.
He does not have a cheese dip NIL deal. I think that's a travesty. I think they need to get that done. And, he had that play at the Sun Bowl where he caught the game-winning touchdown, then went and jumped into the Frosted Flakes Bowl, the inflatable Frosted Flakes Bowl. Just make that a giant vat of queso.
Right on the sideline.
I mean, this is advertising genius here. This is just very easy. They could do this and get the man some money with a cheese dip deal. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. We talked about Kamari Copeland being, Tech's best player, I think, on last week's podcast. How I should probably phrase that is Kamari Copeland's probably their best player on defense, and Brown is their best player on offense.
I think Green could be there too.
Could be, yeah. I think he's a good player too.
I feel like Green, every time I see it, I'm like, I can't believe he's a senior.
Yeah, I know.
Because he didn't redshirt. Sort of got brought along all these years, and then they weren't great at passing the ball last year.
Yeah, last year was such
mentioned.
a wasted year for him.
Just you've never seen what he's capable of, and he makes these catches like he did against Miami, where he's falling out of bounds and dragging his foot behind him, and you go, "That's an exceptional catch."
The one in the bowl game in the rain when he was a freshman. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yeah. That was we have a great picture of that.
Yes,
one.
we do.
Then he
Talking
had that,
about the hurdle.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had that big.
The hurdle
no,
was
the
against
hurdle was
Minnesota.
against
Oh, you're talking
Minnesota,
about
Duke's Mayo
you're
Bowl.
talking about in
Maybe
the
catching traffic.
military bowl.
Yeah, in the military bowl.
He went up really high to catch that. He had a great game in the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
So he plays great in bowl games. Let's make a bowl this year.
2 for 2 on bowl games so far. I think he can be pretty good too. I think that's a great 1-2 punch.
I agree.
They got to bring some other guys along there, and Takai Heath's got to stay healthy. See if Snook Peterkin can take a bigger step his second year. Adams and Wiggins need to be healthy. They need those guys to contribute. But if you're starting with Green and Brown, I like that pairing at the top.
I agree. That's a good starting point. You just got to wonder who's the third starter going to be right now. I would have guessed Jackson before the spring started, but he's been out with an injury the entire spring. So who would that third guy be if the season started tomorrow? I can't answer that question right now. It's a whole bunch of guys. I think I watched Stewie some the last couple of practices, and he catches the ball really naturally with his hands. And I've heard the feedback he's gotten from the coaches has been very strong so far, and he thinks he's right there in the mix as well. So I just think that's a battle that's going to continue throughout the spring and on through August.
I'm sure we talked about how it impacts the quarterbacks, but I'm sure for the wide receivers, kind of the change from a run first quarterback to a pass first quarterback has probably been kind of nice. And we talked about it with Troy Hune and how accurate he was in that scrimmage last week. But I think you've got two really good options in Green and Brown. And that doesn't even consider the tight ends.
Oh, Luke Reynolds would be the third leading receiver on the team.
Yeah, because that's a stacked tight end room as well.
Over Jarikas?
Yeah, I think Luke will start.
Huh?
Yeah.
I like Jarikas.
I
think he's got great
he's,
upside.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's really good in the pass.
I think they'll find ways to use their tight ends creatively.
Absolutely.
Either as like slot receivers or Jarikas did almost sort of some H-back stuff where he was lined up in the backfield.
And you got Gosnell still too.
Right, you do, exactly. So you've got, we sit here talk about, like say on defense, where I'm always like, well, if you're not quite sure about your third linebacker and you want to get your 11 best players on the field, but you feel like you have great cornerback depth, then go with your traditional nickel package more times than not, kind of like you did when Derek Canteen was in the program. And when you don't feel as great about a third corner, then go with more of a star, like when Keontae Jenkins, his last year at Virginia Tech. It's the same thing on offense. Like if you don't feel great about that number 3 receiver, but you feel better about your second or even your third tight end.
2 tight ends.
A little more 2 tight end formation. Yeah.
That's when they had Trey Turner, Tavion Robinson, and then just like
I don't remember seeing
then
what.
Yeah. And that's why you see James Mitchell in the slot so much, just because they needed another receiver.
And returning punts.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Andy, we talked a lot about position groups today. You recently ranked them in one of your articles. What were they, and what was your reasoning behind them?
I'll say that it was not easy. The top I thought was easy. The bottom I thought was easy. I had cornerbacks number 1. I had offensive line at the bottom out of, it was 11 groups. And then when you get between like 3 and 10, 3 and 8, 3 and 9, somewhere there, I feel like they're all kind of the same. So I rank them in order, but the difference between 3 and 8, I think, is probably more minimal. I asked these guys their rankings too, and they kind of lined up, but there were some that were a little bit different. I went running backs or cornerbacks, I should say, number 1, specialists number 2, just kind of looking at kickers. I'm not judging coverage teams. I haven't seen any of that. I don't even know how much they do.
I doubt they've even installed it.
Yeah, they probably do some of it at this point, but certainly nothing we ever see at practice. But their kickers, I think, are pretty good. Running backs, I like the situation there with Hawkins and Overton second, and Bill Davis, what he can contribute. I should say cornerbacks number 1. I just kind of glossed over that. I think the depth is great there. I think you have the 2 guys back who started last year. They weren't standout guys, even though I think IBM had a really good season. But Jaquez White, Josh Clark was out there with the ones the other day.
Yesterday,
and Pry said he could have started last year. So that tells you the level of play he was at. Cam Chadwick coming in as a transfer. Kenny Wosley playing a couple different spots back there. I think they just have more options there. So that's why I like the cornerbacks so much. I went tight ends 4. I think they got a depth there. Quarterbacks 5, which is maybe too high. I just like the potential of that group. Safeties.
It could also be too low by the end of the year.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Safeties and receivers were next. They were sort of about the same. Defensive tackles, defensive ends. I don't like having them that low, but there's some question marks I have about who's the top guy. At those spots. Linebackers 10, offensive line 11.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It is. It's going to be interesting to see how Virginia Tech defends the run. 3 of your bottom 4 position groups were the front 7 on defense, right? Defensive ends, defensive
but the funny thing
linebackers.
is, in one of my mailbags, it was the same mailbag. Somebody's like, "Do you think they're going to be better on offense or defense?" And I'm like. History would suggest defense.
Right.
You look at Pry's history, Franklin's history, Virginia Tech's history. Are you really betting on the offense to be better, especially coming off the year they had last year? So maybe it's sum is greater than the whole, or whatever that saying is. They just might be better, even though the individual standouts aren't better on defense.
Right.
I don't know, but
there might not be an APR.
It's sort of conflicting in my mind because the way I'd rank this, you would definitely say, "Hey, the offense is going to be better this year."
I think there's probably about 4 positions that you could rank in any order. It's right there in the middle, kind of like conference standings. Every year, you try to.
Well, it's like the ACC and trying to predict it in August.
I could see this team finishing 4th. I could also see them finishing 10th. Right.
The other thing is, like liabilities, and I think even though we talked about an improved offensive line, I got to see it on the field too, and I feel like that could be a bigger liability than any part of the defense. Which linebackers probably the weakest part right now, or the most question marks.
Yeah, maybe so.
Even that, I don't feel like there's many question marks in that group as there are on the offensive line that need to be answered.
And the thing is, like, a bad offensive line affects everything else on
messes
offense.
up
Like
the
you
whole
could get your
operation.
quarterback killed, and then all of a sudden your backup quarterback's in the game, and then everything goes downhill.
You can't. It's much more difficult to make a bad offensive line look good than it is for like other defensive positions, because like you were just talking about, if you don't like what's going on at linebacker, you can kind of scheme around it a little bit and bring different personnel on the field. It's not like you can do that as much with the offensive line.
You're struggling on the offensive line. You're like, okay, wide receiver, come in here and play left tackle. But that's not going to work. That's not going to work.
We'll play 3 offensive linemen this week.
Right.
See how the defense responds.
I think what's interesting is like 8 and 9. You had 8 and 9 defensive tackle and defensive ends. And
I didn't like those rankings, if I'm being honest, but you
but
got to put them
they're
somewhere.
really hard to do with
You
this
got to
one.
put them somewhere in some order.
I think it really just says that they've got Kamari Copeland, and it's like, who else? And we really just don't know.
Right. And we haven't seen this team make a single tackle this spring yet, because we haven't seen any contact drills at all. Like, ask again after the spring game, maybe. We might have a better idea.
All right, well, we'll close football on this. Brock Frisbee, a defensive lineman in the class of 2027, committed to Virginia Tech on Friday. He's a 3-star out of Archbishop Spalding High School in Severn, Maryland. He chose Virginia Tech over schools like Cincinnati, Kentucky, Rutgers, and Nebraska. Chris, do you have any early thoughts on this guy?
I do. I like recruiting guys from Maryland. They put a high percentage of players in Maryland go to the NFL. And I was actually talking about with Kyle Altuner yesterday about playing in Maryland. Like he played in that really, really good league in Maryland. And he's like, I'm going against a 4-star every Friday night in that league. He's like, I'm playing against Cortez Harris. I'm playing against Emmett Laws on a weekly basis, sometimes multiple Emmett Laws. Yeah, I mean, that's how good that league is. Great coaching, great talent, great structure. So I really always like getting guys from that league, and he's no different. I think he's got a good motor, pretty good twitch to him, good change of direction as a defensive lineman. So I think Virginia Tech's first 2 commits of the class are defensive line.
That's right.
Yeah.
Coach Chaos.
Yeah, you're talking about Altuner. He went to good counsel.
He did.
Archbishop Spalding. That's where Mansour Delane went.
Right.
Future first-round pick.
I saw Dane
top 10
top
pick,
10
maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I think, and he was an all-conference player in a really, really talented league. And you've continued to see James Franklin and the coaching staff prioritize both fronts, which makes a lot of sense. And now we're getting into like peak recruiting season, and you wrote all spring, Chris, about just the visits, and you have junior days and all these guys coming, and we're gonna get coming on campus and visiting and whatnot, and it's like, okay, now we're gonna get to May and June and July where the recruiting is really going to heat back up again under James Franklin. Like, this is his first like full recruiting class he gets a chance to assemble.
How are we going to judge Delane as a member of DBU when he gets drafted this high? And
I thought
presumably has a successful NFL career.
I thought as a true freshman, I was really high on him coming out of high school, and he was one of my top prospects in that article I write every year. I was a big fan because I thought he was versatile. I thought he tackled well. I thought he covered well. I always wanted to play him safety some at Virginia Tech. When Virginia Tech had multiple corners, like in 2023, I was like, why don't we start Canteen at corner and move Delane to safety, because he can play it really well. And they did it for that in that Pitt game, and they crushed Pitt. I still view him in a good light. Like he played as well as a true freshman at Tech as I think just about any true freshman defensive back has over the years. His problem ultimately is he got bored. He just wasn't being challenged at Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech just wasn't a good program. And I think that the fact that he wasn't challenged on a daily basis did lead to some inconsistencies on the field in his last year, like with the Vanderbilt game and the Syracuse game. But overall, still a really good player. But he needed to leave Virginia Tech to be challenged and get the most out of his ability, in my opinion.
He feels like he's going to be one of the first guys that had success here and then success somewhere else, who then will go on to a big NFL spot.
Yeah.
And it'll be weird because you'll see him
when you watch him on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, doing the Monday Night
Like
Football.
Mansour Delane, LSU.
Mansour Delane, LSU. It's like, okay.
Maybe he'll say Archbishop Spalding.
Like Hendon Hooker had that potential to be that. His NFL career never really took off,
Right.
so you don't see any of that situation. But like, who gets to claim him at the next level? It's kind of weird now.
Khalil Herbert gets when he started in the NFL. Did like he say Virginia Tech instead of Kansas?
There's no way he said Kansas.
Right.
I'll guarantee you that. So yeah, it's always the last one. I mean, Russell Wilson, he'll say Wisconsin when he's on those. I assume he does. I hope he does. I'm
better.
angry he's a Wisconsin grad if he doesn't. But like, man, he was really good at NC State too. Like, I guess they still kind of claim him. So I don't know. How does that whole thing work?
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's all the second. I mean, like Jalen, it's not like Jalen Lane and Bashal Tootin would say like Middle Tennessee or North Carolina A&T.
I'm bad. I'm bad luck for Russell Wilson. Like I saw him play in college against Virginia Tech, and he threw like 3 picks. And then I went to Green Bay for a Packers game, and they were playing the Seahawks in a night game, and he threw 4 or 5 picks that night. It was like something he never does. So I think his touchdown to interception ratio when I'm at
It's like
it's
0 to
1 to
9.
7 or something like that.
Well, it's always good to look ahead at what's up and coming for Virginia Tech, especially on the recruiting front. But right now, Franklin is focused on the spring game, which, as a reminder, is on Saturday, April 18th at 3 p.m. inside of Lane Stadium.
Prepare to attend that one in person if you want to watch it.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think
The
it's
spring
it's
game?
Probably not going to be televised. They haven't announced any television stuff. I don't think it's going to be. If we looked out far enough on the 10-day, what the weather's going to be like.
Ooh, that's a great question. I've been checking it for Boston.
I was looking
this
recently.
weekend,
It
not
said
Blacksburg.
mid-70s for that day.
Oh my
looks
God,
like Friday it's supposed to be next Friday. It's supposed to be 75, high
Okay,
75.
I've got. Come on, God, these ads are terrible. Saturday the 18th, high of 73.
Showers, 46% chance.
40.
I'm not joking. 46% chance.
Yeah,
That's the
I'm-
highest chance of rain over the next week.
Yeah, I'm seeing 50% here, but that could be.
That could be way off. That's still 10 days
It's
away.
10 days away. It
That's
could be nothing
hilarious.
more than sprinkles. You know, easily.
Chance of rain is better than 30 degrees and windy.
Right.
Correct.
I think 30 degrees and windy would scare people off. Chance of rain is like,
And I'm seeing chance of
I'll
rain
bring an
every day
umbrella
between
outside.
Saturday the 18th and Wednesday the 22nd. So it sounds like it's going to rain there a lot. But anyway, it's going to be better than last year, is what we're saying. And we don't think it's going to be on television or streaming or anything like that.
yeah, I don't think they want other teams being
They
able
don't.
to dissect anything with their schemes.
We'll ask Franklin about this on next time we do interviews, but you just have to get used to this. Like Fuente didn't want spring games televised, Pry didn't want them televised. That's how football coaches are these days. So if
I think this specifically for the first year. Now that they've gotten rid of that second transfer window,
right.
I think they'd be okay with televising it, but they haven't put anything of their schemes out online.
Right.
I think you can piece it together.
Sure.
Brent Pry's the defensive coordinator. Has he been a coordinator before? Yes, but they're
Yes.
going to make other teams work on it a little bit to go find exactly what he wants to do defensively. You don't, I mean, I think you have an idea of what Ty Howell will want to do. I mean, Penn State has been kind of one way offensively for a while, but leave a little bit of mystery.
Right.
I think if it's next year and they have both coordinators still in place, and it's after a year, and there's no spring portal to worry about, that you're putting some guy out there that has a standout spring game on tape for everybody to see, maybe there's less concern about that and they'd be more amenable to it being streamed.
I agree. Plus, Franklin wants as many people in that stadium as possible for recruiting
He
purposes.
keeps talking about 67.
Well, he's coming from Penn
He's
State.
like, not 66,
and
I want 67.
Penn State pretty much routinely
Talk to the fire
just
marshal.
about filled up their 100,000 seat stadium for the spring game. So Franklin has very high standards for the spring game. And
I think he'll get a good crowd. I don't think he'll get 66. That's
that would
that's
be tough to
ambitious.
ask. Yeah, no, it's going to be a great weekend though, and we can talk about this more next week. Softball and baseball are home that weekend. What seems like it's going to be, from a temperature standpoint, at least good weather. It'll be a good week to be a Virginia Tech fan. You just you can come back to campus and enjoy multiple sports.
And they always have the run for remembrance is something they do on that weekend. It's just a good weekend to be in Blacksburg.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, rain or shine, try and get into Lane Stadium if you can. But for now, we're going to take a quick break before moving on to some basketball and diamond sports talk. So let's hear from our sponsor, Tyris Homes.
Are you ready for a custom home tailored to your distinctive lifestyle? At Tyris Homes, a leading custom home builder in the New River Valley, we pride ourselves on crafting exceptional residences that our clients love to call home. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a growing family in search for more room, an active adult seeking a relaxing retreat, or looking for a higher-end custom home that offers luxury and sophistication, we have the perfect solution for you. Discover how you can bring your dream home to life at TyrisHomes.com. That's TYRIS Homes.com.
All right. Well, men's basketball saw a few players enter the portal, including Jaden Schutt, Antonio Dorn, and Brett Freeman. But Johnson and Hansberry so far have been retained. How can Tech replace the production of Schutt, Dorn, and Freeman, who didn't play much this season?
I would say the top 4 priorities for me would have been, Hammond, Hansberry, Johnson, and Gerdak. And assuming Hammond's going to come back, I expect he will. That'll be the last announcement that's made. I didn't expect to retain all 4, but those are the 4 I wanted to retain more than anybody else. And I'll consider it a success if you retain 3 of those 4, which it looks like they're going to do. Replacing Schutt is going to be interesting because he's a guy down the stretch. He either was really, really good or didn't shoot it well at all.
He was really super hot,
right,
or ice cold.
Every time he was super hot, Virginia Tech lost, like in the Wake Forest game.
You know what's crazy? One of the biggest shots from last year. This is a tangent, but one of the biggest shots from last year from Jaden Schutt that would have gone down in, I don't want to say lore, but would have been one of the most remembered shots. The 3 he hit late in the shot clock at SMU.
I knew you were going to say that. Yep.
With 25 seconds left.
Mm-hmm.
To put the Hokies up
that was ball game.
5 or 6.
4.
Yeah.
4. I mean,
feels safe in that game, right?
Yeah.
Safely.
I mean, he came up clutch a bunch, but he was not consistent enough. And to be honest, if you're Virginia Tech and you have to prioritize a lot of these guys, and these guys might get offers that are much bigger than you're willing to pay, and they've been inconsistent. A guy like Schutt, I mean, yes, you obviously want to keep him. There's a reason you brought him into the program, right? You want to keep Schutt, you want to keep Gerdak, you want to keep Dorn, because you can't just go find 7-footers anywhere. But at the same time, Gerdak would be the one I would have wanted to keep if I was Virginia Tech. Schutt is irreplaceable, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's a good 3-point shooter, but go back to what Luke Lauk said about him after that Florida State game. Yeah, I mean they attacked him and attacked him and attacked him, and he's not a good enough defender in against certain types of players. Dorn can't really jump. He's kind of one-dimensional in that he screens really well.
He's a 7-footer who blocked 5 shots all year, right? Okay, he had a really good game against Wake. But Virginia Tech can do, even with a limited budget, Virginia Tech can do better than that, in my opinion. Don't you think?
Yeah. I would agree. So Gerdak is the one that really stinks because he just finished his freshman year, and I mean you don't even have to look past that UVA game, the 1917, to see how good he is. Just very difficult. You're only going to have 5 players coming back. You got to rebuild it back up. But if you wanted to keep players, assuming Hammond is going to announce at some point soon, and you get Sincere Jones back as well, this is the group you would have wanted to keep. And with the Brett Freeman thing, it's funny. I remember, I think it was last offseason. You remember Connor Servin left, Chris, late. It's there aren't really walk-ons anymore. So even the people who used to be in walk-on spots kind of expect to be paid a little bit now. And it's so I'm sorry, man.
Nope, sorry about it.
So we'll see. The portal has kind of just opened. You kind of know what Tech is expected to bring back now, and that's a pretty good trio: Hammond, Johnson, Hansberry.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know, talking to Mike Young this summer, what Hansberry's status is coming off of an injury.
Yeah.
When they would expect him back, but you could be in a worse spot.
Yeah, I think a few priorities. Obviously, Schutt is a guy, when his shot isn't on, it's 5-on-4 out there. If he's not making
the
a
UVA
shot,
game I covered. He was 0 for 6.
Right,
from outside.
Exactly right. And so he's a liability defensively. I want Virginia Tech to recruit the best defensive guard they can find, because when it comes down to it, those games they lost late, they lost because they couldn't stop the other team's 1 or 2 from getting out of the lane. They need to, even if it's only a 15-minute a game guy, they need to find a guard who you can put in the game for the last 2 minutes.
Well, Bisa Beatty, come on down.
Exactly. I mean, he would have won multiple games for Virginia Tech because of his defense down the stretch. They're going to need a post player who can play the 4 and the 5, because you don't know Hansberry's status to start the season. Like, you don't know if that's an MCL, in which case he'd be fine, or if it's an ACL, in which case, I don't know if he'd be ready for quite the start of the season or not. At any rate, you would ideally like to have somebody that could play with him or play with whatever true center you recruit. Ideally, you'd like that defensive guard to maybe be a combo guard. I think you can't have everything if you're Virginia Tech. I'd like to sign Trey Beamer as a backup point guard and then sign a combo guard. So then you've got your 2.5 point guards that Mike Young always talks about. But it'll be interesting to see how they build the roster. I think they've probably lost all they're going to lose at this point.
Yeah. Well, and I'm blanking. There's somebody else that I'm completely forgetting about that is coming back, along with Sincere Jones. A freshman, maybe? I'll look.
Solomon Jones.
Solomon Davis.
Solomon Davis.
A true freshman center. Yeah. So, I mean,
He
and I
redshirted.
think if Sincere Jones is probably an overlooked piece, but I think he could really help this program.
Yeah, remember he got hurt this past
Yeah.
year. Yeah, he was contributing some and then got hurt.
He's a guy. Excuse me. If you go back and look at like that Wake Forest game earlier in the year in Winston-Salem, like he had to basically play the 5, and he came up with some big defensive plays. So I think they like him. It's kind of like you get him back from injury. He's been on a scooter, but I think it could be worse. You don't like to lose any of these guys, but kind of the reality of the portal these days. Everybody's losing somebody.
Yeah, and Jones had that huge block against Elon late in the overtime game, saved that one. So yeah, big freshman piece that's going to come back for Virginia Tech. We'll see if they can build back in that bigger player department. But now kind of shifting to the NBA, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is in contention for the NBA's most improved player. He's averaging 21 points, only 2 games this season with less than 10 points scored. He's been on fire.
Obviously a great season for him. A good fit for the Hawks, apparently. This is his 3rd or 4th team or something like that in the 7 years.
So he played for the Pelicans. He got drafted by the Pelicans. Went to the Jazz, went to the Timberwolves.
Pretty good for the T-Wolves.
He was very good. He was kind of like their 6th man.
Yeah.
He had a good role there.
And now he's starting for the Hawks.
And broke the franchise 3-point record, which it's not exactly the NBA I grew up watching. There are more 3-pointers these days, but still a pretty good accomplishment, of course. Especially considering they still got another week in the regular season.
Yeah,
thereabouts.
And the Hawks are a playoff team.
Yeah,
I was surprised.
They're a good
like
team.
I hadn't checked into the NBA too much. They haven't clinched a spot yet, but they're right there at number 5 in the East, which it's the East, so it's not as good, but it's still better than the Hawks feel like they've been for a while. I guess they had a little run there with Trae Young, but then trading Trae Young, I would have expected them to take such a huge step back, but they're still in it.
And he's been part of the reason why. He had never played more than about 26 minutes per game in a season. He's averaging 33 minutes per game, and he's averaging like 20. He's averaging 20.8 points, and he's shooting 39.9% from 3. And if you just look at Nickeil's game log, he had 36 points the other night. On April 1st against the Magic, he had 32. He had a game back against Orlando where he had 41. But it's really cool. I think, Nickeil and I were freshmen at the same time. Like, he was in my class in college, and it's really cool. Like, he was always, I know, like, Chris, you interviewed him a lot as well.
Yeah.
Like, he was always just a down to earth guy who,
Real
like, genuinely
conscientious worker.
who genuinely cared about Virginia Tech. And
I remember he came to Mike Young's press conference when he was introduced.
Yeah.
And everybody knew Nickeil was gone.
it's
he
like,
was there supporting the program. He's got
you
what
got
Nick?
Virginia Tech tattoo?
Does he?
Yeah. So he's a really, really good guy, and I think it shows a lot that, like, he's basically like sat around and like waited for his opportunity, and like on that Timberwolves team that won a ring. He was or made it to the chip.
Timberwolves, they're not winning no rings.
What did they make it? They made
it Western Conference Finals.
Okay. He's been part of, like,
That's something for that franchise, by the way.
Sorry. I don't follow the NBA a ton, but I do follow Nickeil. He's been kind of in that, like, really helpful role, but like has never really been a starter. And like I think you're seeing him really flourish. And he was the guy who I think covered the Timberwolves for The Athletic, wrote a really cool piece when Nikhil left on just about like how loved he was in that city, and how great of a person he was, and how much of a liking that fan base took to him. And the fact that he's basically playing like 30-something minutes a game for the Hawks now and is a starter in like his 7th season in the league, I think it says a lot about just like his patience and like wanting to wait.
Virginia Tech has 2 players in the NBA now. You know, Sean Padula has played in
right.
6 games now for the Clippers, and I thought it was always interesting. We had so many people on our message boards and even some on Twitter saying he wasn't an ACC caliber player. Well, maybe he's not an ACC caliber player, but apparently he's an NBA caliber player.
He's the G League Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year, yeah. So also has 0 turnovers in 6 games in the NBA so far. So congrats, Sean.
Do we count Dorian Finney-Smith as a Virginia Tech?
No, he was only here for 1 year. You got to spend at least half of your career. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Nikhil having a great season, obviously part of that 2019 Sweet 16 team for the Hokies. But now we'll shift over to the women's side of things, where Mackie Nelson, Karis Baker, Sophie Swanson, and Spella Bretzel all hit the portal. But Tech has already received a commitment from Alyssa Latham, who averaged 5 points on 54% shooting with 3 rebounds at Tennessee. And now Tennessee also has no returning players, which is incredible. Zero.
They did pick up a commit this morning. But there was a couple.
Soul.
There was like a day or two where I think she was from Liberty actually. But there was a day or two where they had 0 players on their roster.
Franklin brought that up yesterday. She's like, there's a women's basketball team, I think, that has no players. Everybody's like, it's Tennessee. Tennessee's like, I knew who the team was. I just didn't want to mention it.
Yeah. So you got to be brave to commit to a team like that, right?
With no one.
One of my best friends was Virginia Tech's first commitment for the class of 1993 recruiting class, right?
Football.
Yeah. So they went 2-8-1 in 1992.
You got to,
he caught him at a good time, though.
Right.
So they pick up Alyssa Latham from Tennessee, and then they obviously Wenzel, Suffren, Sears, Trent, and Jenkins all return. What do you guys make of the ins and the outs of this team so far in the early portal days?
I like the Latham commitment, and she's a grad transfer, so Tech got her on campus early, getting ahead in the process. I think she's a very similar like for like replacement with Kyla Freelon. We just talked about how much of a mess Tennessee has been, and it did go to the Sweet 16 last year. But I would not, with the style Kim Caldwell plays, where doing hockey line changes, I would not look at her stats too much, because it's hard when you're playing 15, 20, 25 minutes a game, and it's changing all the time because you're just trying to shoot as many shots as possible. Go back and look at Latham's, you can see it in some of her film, but also go back and look at her stats from her freshman year at Syracuse. She was an all ACC freshman team pick with the likes of Hannah Hidalgo, Kamora Johnson, Zoe Brooks. Like, that's really, really good talent to be around. I think she's really going to help them. And she's from Illinois, I believe. She's from the Midwest. Duffy has familiarity with her, recruited her at Marquette, so it makes sense. This is such an interesting time. You know, you got Carly Wenzel, who was an All-American honorable mention, Suffren, all those other players you mentioned that announced they're coming back. And I would expect that we've hit the last of the departures at this point. But naturally, the fans are going to worry when you see your top 3 players in Baker and Wenzel walk out the door. I think Virginia Tech, like the men in the women's game, a little bit similar in that you've got to prioritize players, right? And at the same time, you know, if players are getting ridiculous deals, you can only hang on to them so much. At the end of the day, you have to prioritize what's best for your program. But it is a little worrying, but at the same time, I think that they have the opportunity to rebuild it exactly how Duffy wants it. And they got a lot of resources at their disposal. And if you'll use the term, they have freed up salary space essentially now with Freelon and Daly graduating and Baker and Wenzel off the books. And they can kind of restructure the roster however they want. And they've got a lot of talented kids in the program and freshmen coming in. So I could go more on Baker and Nelson departing. But I've talked to some people around the program, and they think they're in a good spot, even with those departures. And at the end of the day, sometimes you just gotta prioritize kids.
Just to be clear, Wenzel's coming back.
Wenzel's coming back.
Okay.
Did I say
you said Wenzel? I think you meant Nelson.
Nelson. Oh, sorry.
Departed.
Yes.
But Baker departing feels like it's a pretty big deal. I mean, second leading scorer, second leading rebounder, top 3-point shooter, I think.
Yes.
By the end of the year, that's production that's going to be tough to replace.
I'll simplify it. Like, Carly Wenzel's your best player, so she's going to be your highest paid player. You can't pay anybody else on that team more than Carly Wenzel, unless you bring in somebody better from outside.
Yes.
But no returning player could make higher more than Carly Wenzel. If they demanded that much, then they can't play here anymore, right? Imagine if the NFL, you were a free agent every year, and somebody who played for the Chiefs was like, I should be paid more than Patrick Mahomes. And you'd be like, well, you're going to play for somewhere else then, because Patrick Mahomes is our highest paid player, right? That's how it is in college, right? You determine who your best player is. That's your highest paid player. And if anybody else demands more than that, they got to go.
Was Wenzel head and shoulders above Baker? I look at their stat line and they look pretty.
I
they look pretty similar in terms of impact.
Baker's a 3-point specialist. So Wenzel can do more variety.
I would categorize it like this.
I mean, they're different styles of player, but I think just looking at their stat impact, pretty similar.
Yeah, very similar. I think the thing about Baker, like, she would have been the one you wanted to keep, but her game is, she's 6'2"-ish, and she's like a stretch 4, but doesn't really have much of an inside game. She's a good rebounder, but she's kind of one-dimensional in that she only shoots from the outside. She's really, really, really good at it, but she's limited in what you can do. And when her 3-point shot was not falling, it's like she's basically out of the game offensively. I think
she's like a better shoot.
Yeah, with more positional versatility.
Yeah. I mean.
A shoot who averaged 15 a game,
right? Because
she was more consistent. But the thing with Wenzel is she's got more versatility to her game, I think. And I between Baker and Nelson, Nelson was one of the best point guards in the country this year in terms of assists per game and assist to turnover ratio. At the same time, she is limited offensively. She only shot like 38%. She doesn't really have a 3-point shot. She doesn't really stretch the floor. So it's difficult at times, because if Baker shot, like with the 5 they had on the floor last year, Freelon didn't shoot the ball much from the outside. And if you had a lineup of Wenzel, Wells, Nelson, Baker, Freelon, and Baker's not hitting threes, you really only have one 3-point option, and it's Wenzel. The limits are there. And I think while it stinks that these players are leaving, there's an opportunity here on the other side of it to go, okay, can we get players that are a little bit more balanced, that help us become a little bit more well-rounded? But Baker, I mean, she could go get a really good payday somewhere else, and I expect she will. And the Nelson situation doesn't surprise me as much. The Baker one does a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is kind of the era we're in. You're seeing a lot of really, really good players get up and leave. And the good news is, unlike Tennessee, unlike Oklahoma State, programs that have seen everyone walk out the door, the Hokies are retaining a pretty good core, and they've got some good freshmen coming in as well.
Well, that'll do it for our basketball segment. We'll head over to the Diamond, but after this quick break, let's hear from our studio name sponsor, Tech Solutions.
This Tech Sideline video comes to you from the Tech Solutions studio. Tech Solutions, located in Arlington, Virginia, provides specialized CETA engineering and financial advisory services to the Department of Defense and Intelligence community. Based on the philosophy of only hiring the best of the best, we pride ourselves on being customer and mission focused. A Washington Post top workplace winner in 2024 and 2025, we're always looking for talented and motivated individuals to join our team. Visit techsolutionsva.com/careers to learn more. That is TEC Solutions TechSideline.com/careers.
Well, baseball lost in a series to Miami, but they won game 3, a 19-1 loss in game 1, and then lost to Liberty during the midweek yesterday. They went through 8 pitches, but they have Boston College coming up. Chris, you're taking a trip to Fenway Park.
I am.
On that Saturday
yeah.
game?
Hopefully, if they're going to win a game this weekend, hopefully it's that one. We make fun of Boston College about not being good at anything, and the thing that they're normally not good at is baseball. But this year they happen to be good at baseball. I think they're ranked 17th or thereabouts. God, they beat UVA like 17-0 in a game a couple of weeks ago. So they're a really good team, but Virginia Tech has pitching depth problems like they usually. Like they started someone earlier this week that. Who hadn't started a game in 2 years since 2024, hadn't pitched in a game in 2 years, much less started. So there's major depth issues there for the Hokies. But hopefully they can win while I'm there and make my Fenway trip even better.
They better get going soon if they have any hopes of making the tournament. They played a tough schedule so far. Some of the top
they got
teams.
a top 5 schedule.
They have an relatively easier stretch coming up, but they got to make some hay here.
Right.
Otherwise, that's going to run out of time to make any sort of resume impression here.
Well, they keep losing midweek games. And when you do that, that just shows that you have no pitching depth at all. So they're not an NCAA tournament team. Like they're not far away. If they had one more pitcher, one more hitter, I think they probably would sneak in. But like if they have a pitching injury, like that's it. You know, they struggle to win any games.
I think the bright spot has been Griffin Stig. He's been really good on. 3 straight Sunday wins.
Yep.
He's been pretty impressive. The difficult part, you go through injuries, of course. At times the bats have not been consistent. At times the pitching has not been consistent.
I was at the Stanford game, the Sunday game in that series. They loaded the bases 3 times, and each time they struck out with 1 out and the bases loaded, right? And I think they left 17 runners on base in that game. So situational hitting has not been great.
I mean, it's you've got to capitalize on those opportunities when they come about. Yes, they left 17 on base in that game. You can't have that if you want to. And they lost 6-3, and they had multiple opportunities.
In extra innings.
Yeah, I mean, it was, in the 10th. Stanford played at 3 in the 10th. The opportunity to win was there. And if the difference in baseball, as we know, the difference between being pretty good and really good is just a fine line.
You got to just shorten up and put the ball in play. Like, Stanford won that game, and this won't show up in a box score. But Stanford's big hit in the 10th inning was a bloop double that hit the line down the left field.
And it spun out.
It was one of their softest hit balls of the whole game, right? It was just a pop fly that happened to hit the line, and that's how they won. And meanwhile, Virginia Tech couldn't make contact when they had the bases loaded with 1 out 3 different times in the game. So you got to put the ball in play, man.
Yeah, well, baseball struggling, softball rolling, a consensus top 12 team in the country. They beat Clemson 2-1 and then beat Radford 7-2 yesterday. They're 34-5 on the season. They have UVA on the weekend.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. The softball has not played the toughest schedule in the world.
They played tough earlier in the season, non-conference.
Yeah.
Sam Mostow said that they played. Tech and UVA played about 80 times, and they've only played 3 total times to this point where both teams are ranked.
Wow.
And both teams are ranked this weekend, so that number will double. This is a big time challenge in Charlottesville, but you've seen them handle business. Like Thursday did not go the way they wanted against Clemson in that series opener. They bounced back with 2 wins, played really, really well, swept BC, swept NC State. They are kind of a machine right now, and different players stepping up. Bats have been good, but also the pitching has been pretty balanced. But this series this weekend is going to be very entertaining to watch because, wasn't too long ago that UVA was not good at all at softball.
Yeah.
And UVA is kind of right up there towards the top of the league now too.
Well, that's what's happening on the diamond. What is happening at TechSideline.com?
I'm going to have an article about Kyle Altuner probably tomorrow. And Andy, you've got...
I'm working something Quayshawn Brown.
Okay.
Heavy podcast schedule today, so
Yes.
we'll see if we get that in today or tomorrow, sometime soon though.
Yeah, and then I'll have a Friday Q&A as well.
Just keeping finger on the portal, seeing what happens. We'll know more. I would expect one or both programs to maybe have some, like if you were going to have visitors, you'd start to have them this weekend officially from the portal. But they're like, I think between the men's and the women's portal, there are almost 3,000 total players between them. And it's just, that's the day and age we live in, man.
Yeah. And generally something happens, whether it's commits or whatever, when I'm out of town on vacation. So I would look for something to pop somewhere between Friday through Monday.
All right. Well, Nick, what's happening on the audio video schedule?
Got Talking with Teal, that'll be recorded today, posted tomorrow, and then Friday Q&A on Friday. That's it.
All
Have
right.
fun.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching episode 480 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, and share the show with a friend if you have not already. For Chris Coleman, David Cunningham, and Andy Bitter, I'm Landon Weaver, signing off.